Hey everyone. Today I'm going to take you through the simplest way to import your contacts into HubSpot. So even if this is the very first time, you'll be able to do it confidently by the end. And if you stick around, I'll show you 2 pro tips that most beginners miss. It'll keep your CRM clean and make you look like a pro from day one. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure our spreadsheet, our data is nice and clean. So I've got this example contact list that we've got together here from new contacts that we got from a business networking event. And we've got to start by making sure we have column headers. So the first row needs to have the names of the properties or something equivalent to what you want to include in HubSpot or where you want the data to go. So the first thing is we can see here in HubSpot, we've got the name, we've got email, job title, company name, phone number. These are the values, the properties we have in HubSpot and the values we want to import. HubSpot separate them out into first name and last name. They put it together into this useful column in HubSpot, but actually when you import, you need to have a first name and a last name in separate columns. So we can see them here. And then you've got your email address. Obviously the email needs to be properly formatted for that to work as well. We have job title here, but the title in this column is called role. So we don't have to do this. We can actually connect it up even if we don't change the column name. But I do like to keep the column name consistent with what we have in HubSpot, just to make it even easier when we start importing. Company name is usually the exact title for the property. And then we have phone. And I'm going to keep this, I'm going to make this just a little bit different, and we'll see how we connect this up as well into the system when we import. So now we've got this ready. And to clarify, the most important column you want to make sure you have is email. Without email, HubSpot will struggle to update existing contacts, so it won't know which contact is which when you're importing. It won't be able to tell just first name, last name. Sometimes they can be different. Different person can have the same first name, last name. So email is the one value that we know and HubSpot knows is unique when importing. So you want to make sure that's correct and you want to have that in place. You can import without any data here, potentially, but then the next time you import these people, it'll create another contact in HubSpot, another record, and then you'll end up with many of the same person. So you want to always try and have an email for every contact you're importing to HubSpot, or make sure when you're in HubSpot, you update and add the email later in that record. So we've got the email there. And the other thing I like to do is usually before I edit the sheet, I'll actually duplicate it, rename it import, and then change the names of the titles as well. So you can try that. That way you can always go back and forth between the original in case you need to check anything as well. It's a little quick tip that I like to use. I also like to do it in Google Sheets because it allows you to very simply and easily download as the CSV. You can do this in Excel as well and other tools. You just have to make sure, I like to make sure that I use .csv to export, and that way I don't end up with multiple sheets in an export as well, like all of these sheets. When you download as a CSV, you get just the sheet you're looking at as well. So that's my personal preference, is I do it in Google Sheets and then I just export as a CSV like that. Let's do that now. And then we can go back into HubSpot. And we see here we're on the contacts section here of HubSpot, HubSpot CRM, contacts, and then the contacts. You can import from this page. Actually, you can import from any of these CRM pages. And you can also import from the segments/lists section of HubSpot. It's been renamed from lists into segments. It's the same thing. And any of these places you can basically go and click on the import button. It's just up here on the top right. And then you can import. And it doesn't matter what you're importing. You can go from any screen. And we go here, you can see here, if you scroll down, you can see any past imports you might have done. There are some other options here, which maybe we'll talk about in another video. But in this case, we just want to focus on import a file. And we click import data. And then here again, you can see a few different other options, but we're going to focus on just as straightforward as possible for this video. So we want to import our contact list. So we're going to click on start import here. Then you've got a lot of different objects, different kinds of data that you can import. Again, we're keeping it simple. We're just doing contacts in this video. But in other videos, we might go through a little bit more of these other options here and some more complex imports. But this is just straightforward import process for contacts in this video. So we click on contacts. And then we click next. And you can also use return or enter key to make this a bit faster as well if you want. We grab the file that we just exported, drop it here, and you can also click there and look in your computer and find the file as well to import it. We can select what we want to import. You can actually leave all of this without touching it, but you can choose to only import and create new contacts or only update existing contacts. But we're going to do both and leave it as default. Create and update contacts. So it will basically find any existing contacts and update them, and it will also add new contacts if they're not in the system already. You can change language if you're using another language for your contacts. Click next. And then HubSpot's import system has improved a lot over the years, and now it's pretty smart. It does a lot of lifting behind the scenes, in terms of trying to double check your data is good, make sure that it's aligned with the right properties as well. We can see here that this import, it's quite a simple import that we're doing. Just first name, last name, email, job title, company name, and this telephone to column. And so we can see here that it's found. This is basically just double checking the data has the details it needs, which is email, first name, last name. That's the minimum required if we're going to create a contact. And we need the email if we're going to update a contact. So if it's all ticked, you can ignore this section here. No errors found, usually looking at the email address in particular. All the emails are correct. They have one @sign.com or whatever. And then we get to the mapping stage for the different fields and properties, the columns and the properties. So we can see here the column header from the file. If you read each of these, you can see very clearly what we're talking about here. So we've got the column header like this, first name corresponds to first name like this. We've got import as the contact property. All of these are contact properties, so you don't have to worry about changing any of these. They should all be contact properties. And then related to the specific HubSpot property. So first name, last name, email. And you can choose to tick this and not overwrite the existing data if you want. Let's say your first name, last name in the spreadsheet, maybe not sure, 100% sure about these people's names, then you might want to say don't overwrite just in case you have better data already in HubSpot. But if it's a new database and you don't have many contacts, then probably just can keep that as don't overwrite. Or if you know for sure that this data is better than the data you've already got in your system. And then as we scroll down here, we can see that telephone to doesn't correspond to any property here. It hasn't been able to find a property because in HubSpot, we don't have a telephone to in our account. So we can choose which property it goes to. And let's say we want to just put it with the phone number property. So now we can say telephone to is correspond to that phone number property. We can change that for any of these as well. Any property that exists in HubSpot, even custom properties that you might have created as well, that can go here in your mapping stage as well. And what I like to do is when I go back, just to make sure, I like to go back to the spreadsheet and also change it as well. So it's also similarly updated. So if I do have to do another export, it'll be ready to sync and it's already mapped straight to that. And then we can go back to HubSpot here. Now let's click next. And now we see the last stage before we import. So we can rename the import name inside HubSpot. We can change this to whatever you want to keep it, just so you can keep a record of it. I personally like to keep it the same name as the spreadsheet that I've imported so that I can track it down later. But you could certainly change this to whatever you prefer as well. We can then go straight to creating a list or a segment, as they're called now in HubSpot, straight from this import. If we wanted to make sure this is a list that we can refer back to, a segment we can look back to, we can maybe set emails for, we can do other kind of organization for. I'll tick that for now. And then also we can say, we should say, I agree that these contacts know and expect to be contacted by you. This is a required field. So you should know who you're contacting and that they've been given permission to be contacted. This is because it's good case practice to make sure that your contacts are aware that they're going to be contacted if you do plan on emailing them or contacting them, and that they've given you permission in some form for that. And in some cases, it's a legal requirement as well. So make sure you're aware of that when importing contacts and contacting them in the future. And we can also tick this enrich contacts if you want to take advantage of HubSpot's AI functionality to add even more detail to these contacts and do even more sort of background research through AI to populate inside your HubSpot system for that. And then once that's all clear, tick that. Then we can click Finish Import. And while this is running, we can see now import in progress. We've got the number of rows that have been imported, 30. So you want to make sure that that aligns with what you're expecting. New records, 5 new records have been created in HubSpot from that import. And then I've got 25 contacts that have been updated from this import. You can click here to view the contacts in HubSpot. And then under More, you can see the contact segment that's been created. You can add imported contacts to another segment if you wanted to, and you can download the contacts file that's been. And if there were any errors, they'll show up here as well, and you can click and view errors. The most common errors are things like the email address not formatted correctly, columns going, like maybe the data's wrong. It'll show you those coming in here, and I'll do another video at some point as well to go into more detail about the errors and how to troubleshoot with importing. And then that's basically it. And if there's any formatting suggestions from HubSpot as well, that'll come up just here on the right. So we can click here and we'll go view contact segment. Well, firstly, when we clicked on view contacts, we can see them all in the contacts section here of the CRM. These are the contacts being added, the 5 new contacts there. We can see them all now, they've all loaded. So we can see what data has come in, just to double check. And we can see this is the segment that's been created here. So 30 new contacts, and we can rename this so that it's a bit neater for HubSpot. Like that, for example, we could put the date there as well. And then we can use this to do marketing, to do further segmentation and make sure we don't lose track of who these contacts are from that activity that we met them in, for example. So to finish off, I want to share 2 pro tips. So number 1 is that if you have a big import list, a big spreadsheet you want to import, I suggest just doing a test with, say, 2 or 3 rows, 2 or 3 records at once, and don't try and do the whole import in one big go, just to make sure that any of the data is not in the wrong columns or being imported in the wrong way. You can just double check that everything you've got set up is done correctly. I think if you're doing a small import, it's probably fine, but if you're doing a larger import, do it in 2 steps. Tip number 2 is you can filter by the import later on. So if you're in your contacts and you want to find all those contacts here, this is 145 records here in this contacts. I just want to go back to that list of imported contacts, or the total imported contacts. I can just go like this. I can type in import in the filter, and then I can find this particular import here because I named it, I kept it with the same name. And then I can view just that import like that. 30 records are now appearing. So that's basically it. Thanks for listening and watching the video up to the very end here. And I've included a bit more detail in the description below if you want to follow up or learn anything more. And please share a comment if this has been useful and if there's something else you'd like to learn next. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.